The saloon was louder than usual that night, boots scraping across warped floorboards, cards slapping against tables, laughter that didn't quite reach anyone's eyes. But when she said the words, the whole place changed. Conversations faltered, glasses stopped midair, and the piano player's hands hesitated above the keys as though even he felt the tremor in her voice. "Can you buy me?" It slipped out too fast, too sharp, too reckless, born from desperation wrapped in a whisper. The kind of question only someone with nothing left would dare ask. She regretted it instantly. Not because of what it meant to broken bar, but because of the man who heard it. The rancher didn't look up at first. He simply sat there, leaning back in his chair, hat tipped low enough to hide the storm brewing in his eyes. He was a man built from the land, the wide shoulders hardened by labor, hands scarred from a lifetime of work, and a silence that commanded more respect than most men's shouting. The lantern behind him cast a glow across the dust lifting in the air, framing him like the last line between danger and salvation. When he finally raised his head, the room seemed to tilt around her. His gaze didn't wander, not to her dress, not to her trembling hands, not to the curious faces around them. He looked straight into her eyes, seeing everything she never meant to reveal. No judgment. No hunger. Just understanding. Too much understanding. It made her chest tighten. She swallowed hard, wishing she could snatch the words back and shove them down her throat. She hadn't meant to not like that. It was supposed to be a joke, a bluff, a distraction. Something to keep her from looking as desperate as she felt. Something to make her seem like a woman in control, not a runaway with a past clawing at her heels. But when she saw the rancher's expression, she knew he didn't think she was joking. And worse, he knew she wasn't. Silence spread through the saloon like a slow spill of kerosene. Every pair of eyes was watching. Men who'd passed her by for months suddenly studying every breath she took. Women who understood her struggle shifting uncomfortably, unable to look away. The bartender froze with a bottle in his hand. Even the wind seemed to pause outside. She wasn't afraid of the room. She was afraid of him. Because this was a man who didn't play games. Everything about him, his stillness, his measured breaths, his unbroken gaze, told her he lived by one rule: he finished what others were too frightened to start. She tried to step back. Her heel caught on a loose floorboard. A tiny stumble. Barely noticeable. But his eyes flicked down, catching it, and something in his jaw tightened as if he'd just witnessed more truth in that small motion than in the words she'd spoken. His voice, when it finally came, was low and steady. The kind of voice that carried without being loud. "Is that what you're asking me?" She opened her mouth, but her throat felt sanded raw. The truth was crawling under her skin, desperate to get out. She didn't want to be bought. She wanted to be safe. For one night. Just one night. A place to hide. A corner to breathe without looking over her shoulder. But she couldn't say that. Not here. Not with the ears of the entire saloon waiting to devour every syllable. So she forced a smiley, thin, shaky, brittle. "It was just a question," she whispered. The rancher didn't smile back. He didn't even blink. "That so?" Her pulse thudded against her ribs like a fist. She'd seen men like him before, a man who studied more than they spoke, men who stored every piece of truth until it became a weapon. But there was something different about him. Something heavy. Something dangerous. Not danger toward her, but danger toward anything that tried to touch her. She didn't want that responsibility. She didn't want his attention. She couldn't afford what it might cost. She glanced toward the door, thinking if she moved fast up, if she slipped out now, maybe she could escape both him and the man closing in on her past. But when she took a breath to run, his chair scraped across the floor. Slow. Deliberate. Controlled. He stood. Every man in the room straightened. Some because they respected him. Others because they feared him. Most because they weren't sure if tonight was the night he'd finally snap. He took one step forward. Just one. But it felt like the entire world shifted closer with him. "You offered something," he said quietly, "but not the price." Her heart seized. "I didn't mean a." "You did." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Or you wouldn't be shaking. She stiffened, hiding her hands behind her back. "I'm not shaking. The truth doesn't need you to admit it." Her jaw clenched. "I don't want trouble." His eyes softened barely, but enough to make her breath catch. "I know." That frightened her more than anger. Because how did he know? How could he possibly know what she was running from? How could he see through her so easily? Before she could step away, he tipped his hat back slightly, allowing the lantern light to reveal the scar across his cheek, thin, pale, old. The kind earned from surviving something no man should have survived. That was when she realized he recognized fear because he carried his own. The room seemed to dissolve around them. Voices faded. Lights dimmed. Sounds blurred. Only his gaze remained strong, unwavering, unshakable. She felt the truth rise inside her like a tidal wave. She had asked the wrong man the wrong question on the wrong night. Because he wasn't reaching for his wallet. He wasn't evaluating her like men in her past had. He was reading her every tremor, every instinct, every hesitation. He already knew she wanted shelter. He already knew she was scared. He already knew someone was hunting her. And she could see the conclusion forming behind his eyes. She didn't need to be bought. She needed to be protected. That terrified her more than anything. Because the last thing she wanted was to owe a man like him a broken bar, a man who didn't take what wasn't given. But he did take something that night, something she didn't realize she'd offered. Her truth. And she couldn't get it back. The rancher didn't ask her a single question on the ride back to his land. She sat behind him on the saddle, hands barely resting on his coat so she wouldn't fall, heart thundering against her ribs. The night air was cold, carrying the scent of sagebrush and faraway rain, but being near him felt like standing beside a fireplace, steady, dangerous, impossible to ignore. His horse moved with calm discipline, every step a reminder that he was a man used to leading, never following. Not people, not fear, not fate. She didn't know whether that comforted her a broken bar or terrified her. When the cabin came into view, she almost didn't believe it. It wasn't large, but it was solidly built with thick logs. The porch roof slanted like a protective arm. Warm light glowed behind the windows, softer and welcoming, as though the place itself breathed safety. No one had ever built something for her. No one had ever offered refuge without asking anything in return. She wasn't sure she trusted it. She wasn't sure she trusted him. The rancher dismounted and held out a hand. She hesitated. His palm was rough, calloused, marked by work and weather, but something about the steadiness of it made her chest soften. Still, she didn't take it. He didn't force her. He simply waited until she climbed down on her own. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Men from her past never waited. They demanded. Took. Controlled. But he broken bar didn't. Inside, the cabin smelled of cedar, smoke, and the faintest touch of coffee, old coffee, the bitter kind that lingered in the air like tired memories. The rancher lit a lantern, the flame snapping to life and filling the room with amber warmth. She noticed the details, the worn leather chair near the hearth, the boots lying neatly by the door, the half-finished wood carvings on the shelf. Everything here was built by hand. Everything had purpose. Everything spoke of a man who lived simply but carried more weight than most. "You hungry?" he asked. The words landed softly, but she flinched anyway. "Yeah, broken bar, I'm fine," she lied. He nodded once, as if he already knew the truth but wouldn't push. He moved around the kitchen space, a small corner with a pot, some dried herbs, a tin cup. The casual quietness of his movements unsettled her more than any question he could have asked. He didn't look like a man trying to impress her or intimidate her. He looked like someone who had learned to exist in silence because silence had been his only companion for too long. She wrapped her arms around herself and drifted toward the fire. The coat he'd given her smelled faintly of pine. She didn't mean to sit down. She didn't mean to stay. She only meant to warm her hands for a moment. But exhaustion crept over her like a tide, dragging her deeper into the chair until her eyes grew heavy. She fought idle God, she tried. She didn't want to show weakness, didn't want to fall asleep in a stranger's home, didn't want to let her guard down. Yet the warm, the broken bar, the quiet, a broken bar, the safe, a broken bar. She drifted. When she opened her eyes, morning light streamed through the windows, softer and golden. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Panic stabbed through her chin, sharp, blinding, instinctual. She sat up too fast, breath-catching. Then she heard it. A steady thud. A rhythm of power. Steel splitting wood. The rancher. She moved to the window and watched him. He wasn't wearing his coat, only a faded shirt with sleeves rolled up, revealing arms corded with strength. Every swing of the axe was controlled, clean, efficient. He didn't waste movement. He didn't fight the wood, he understood it, worked with it. It was the way a man moved when he'd grown used to battling storms, both outside and inside himself. She saw something else too, something unexpected. Gentleness. Not in his strength, but in the way he paused between swings, scanning the horizon as if ensuring no danger approached. He wasn't chopping wood. He was guarding the land. Guarding his home. Guarding a broken bar. The realization sent a tremor through her. She stepped outside quietly. The air was cold enough to sting her skin. The rancher didn't turn immediately, but she knew he'd sensed his shoulders eased, the tension in his stance melting slightly. "You slept," he said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't judgment. It was simply fact. "I didn't mean to," she murmured. "You needed it." Her brows knit. No one had ever spoken to her like that, and not with softness, not with understanding, not with the quiet certainty of someone who didn't need explanations. He set the axe aside, wiping his hands on a cloth. Then he looked at her fully, and she felt every secret she carried tremble beneath his gaze. "Where were you headed last night?" he asked. She froze. He held up a hand. "I'm not asking you to tell me. Just asking if you know." Her throat tightened. She shook her head. "Didn't think so," he said simply. She stared at him, confused. "Why do you care?" The rancher stepped closer, not enough to intimidate, but enough that she felt the warmth radiating from him. "Because someone out there thinks they own you." Her blood ran cold. He reached into his coat as slowly, so she wouldn't flinch, and pulled out something small and metallic. She realized with horror what it was. A tag. Thin. Worn. Engraved. The symbol of the men who had claimed her past. Her vision blurred. "Where did you Found it in your bag," he said. "Stuck to the lining. I figured you didn't keep it on purpose." She grabbed the portrayal, the world tilting beneath her. He wasn't angry. He wasn't demanding answers. He wasn't accusing her of bringing danger to his land. He was bracing for a fight that wasn't his. "You're not for sale," he said quietly. Something in her broke. No man had ever told her that. No man had ever believed it. Her voice cracked. They're coming. I know. You could get hurt. He looked past her toward the open land, jaw tightening. Doesn't matter. Why? She whispered. He turned back, eyes steady as earth. Because I don't let people fight alone. And because you didn't ask me for money last night. She blinked, trembling. Then a broken bar. What did I ask for? You asked for a night. Safety. A chance to breathe. His voice softened. And I'm giving it to you. She didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. Not one that didn't feel like it would shatter her if she spoke it. But she knew this. He wasn't claiming her. He wasn't taking her. He wasn't buying her. He was standing between her and the darkness still hunting her. And when he faced the horizon, shoulders squared, ready for whatever was coming, a broken bar, she understood something she wished she could deny. She had come to him for one night. But the rancher was giving her something she'd never had, something she didn't know how to return.